Welcome to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Dr. Amit Mohindra.
Hey, Directionally Correct fans, we're off this week, so here's a replay of a previous episode we thought you'd like. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter on Substack to get behind-the-scenes information, watch our videos on YouTube, or check out other episodes of the podcast on your app of choice. Thanks for listening. Directionally Correct is dedicated to you, our listeners, to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. By supporting this podcast, you are helping us continue to provide valuable insights and knowledge to our listeners. Please consider becoming a patron of the podcast. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for your support. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization. It's an awesome sweater.
There he is.
How's it going?
It's going well, thanks. So nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice
are
to
you
meet
feeling?
you.
Are you feeling any better?
I'm feeling better. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It's some sort of head cold, beginnings flu. We forget that these other normal things still happen, even if it's not COVID.
Yeah, sometimes I just tell people, like, I don't want to be on camera. Just like, not interested today.
When the last episode that we launched, I actually had the flu on the episode. I didn't find out till afterwards. So, I think, I'm pretty in touch with what you're going through right now for sure.
Well, you're a brave and committed man.
Do you have any holiday plans, Amit?
Not really. We were going to go to London, but those plans fell through. So probably just staycation and maybe a couple of nights up in New Hampshire or Maine or something.
Man, I've been to London during the holidays. It's absolutely magical. Like the big winter wonderland thing in Hyde Park. It's absolutely just fantastic. Well, I'm sorry you're not going to be able to enjoy it.
Way to rub it in, Scott.
And it's snowing over there right now too. I'm sure it's just wonderful.
Some other time.
Some other time.
Yeah. Well, you've been a podcast listener, haven't you, Amit?
I have, yeah. I've got quite a few of your episodes. Always so much fun. I think you guys just bring a dimension that we haven't had before of fun and spontaneity. And I love all the different parts of it, the nerdery, the surprise stuff.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go a totally different direction of and nobody asked for it, the dimension that you guys bring. So that's kind of what we're about here.
Big question mark over our head sometimes, right? So we don't know. We don't have all the answers, which is why we got you here. So you can help fill in the gap.
Well, I'm here to get answers from you guys. So there's been some miscommunication, apparently.
Scott's the only one with answers on this call. I'm still trying to figure it out.
I got answers, but perhaps not right answers.
Yeah.
I got opinions.
Well, Amit, tell me this, because I think I can't remember whose episode it was, but one of the episodes I was talking about doing a genealogy of people analytics, and how there's certain figures that play a key role in the past or the creation of people analytics. I definitely see you in that genealogy of sorts with kind of what you've done and what you've brought to the field. So what is it like being an elder statesman in the people analytics field?
So I take that with love, as I'm sure it's meant. But I think elder statesman, I'm not sure that's what I want to be necessarily viewed as. If it were to be a member of the pantheon of people analytics pioneers, I'd love to be there. Maybe pioneer is a good
pioneer.
Good word to use. But,
what's it like to be a people analytics pioneer? I reversed my question.
No worries. Pioneer or another way to look at it is, and this is triggered by somebody from my high school who just yesterday was named as the editor of the Wall Street Journal. And
Really?
She was described as a veteran journalist. So maybe I'm a veteran people analytics leader. And when
there you
you
go.
need something done right, you can't afford to take any chances. You bring in the veteran.
So
Absolutely.
you guys must have like a hell of a class reunion when you get together. Be like, I'm people analytics pioneer. Like, well, I'm editor of the Wall Street Journal. Get to compare
Uh,
notes.
I'm not in that pantheon. We have a very illustrious class. So just quick digression. You guys may not know, but I went to high school in New Mexico. I spent
I
the
didn't know
last
that.
years of high school in the mountains of New Mexico at an international school that was part of a broader movement designed to promote peace and international understanding. And it was founded by a couple of folks who wanted to prevent a second world war from happening or a third world war from happening. And so they brought together students at a young age, 16 to 19, to live and study together and essentially try and create relationships and understandings that would lead to
Amit, I'm
would not
gonna
lead
have
to
to admit
not lead to
this.
war.
That either sounds amazing or it might be a cult. Was it a cult?
Not a cult. No, no. It was the latter. It was amazing. So imagine. So I was in the first class of that school in New Mexico. We had 100
Okay.
kids from about 43 countries, but Israel, Palestine, Rwanda, Burundi after the Civil War.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
so far so good. I mean, like it's working.
I'll date myself. Soviet Union,
Yeah.
PRC before there were any other Chinese students outside China a long time ago. Black and white South Africans, Indians and Pakistanis. So you can imagine quite quite
Wow.
quite an engaging couple of years.
You are about to learn how uncultured Scott and I are in this discussion. But it sounds amazing. Like you
Just
checked all the boxes. Was it meant to be like counterparts from different countries? Like who was there a counterpart to you? Was there somebody you were supposed to like bond with?
No, not necessarily. There were, every country has a national committee and they select students. So it's all based on merit. Most of the
Okay.
students are in scholarship. So you get a range of backgrounds.
Yeah.
so up in like Ruidoso, New Mexico.
It's in a town called Montezuma, which has probably
Montezuma.
more sheep than people till the school arrived. And that's about an hour and a half from Santa Fe.
Okay.
And my
That's
dream,
wild.
I should perhaps talk about it now, is to have a people analytics conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. One day we'll make
Why?
it.
Let's do it. No,
Yeah.
no, let's make it happen.
The Normcore conference hasn't happened yet. It could always be in Santa Fe.
That could be, but I think Normcore is already planned, and I was a little too late to get in for a slot. But I'm looking forward to that. That's next week, I think, right? Or when
Oh
is
no!
it?
So this is so the actual Normcore conference, the real one, is happening on December 15th. But like this is a spinoff just for people analytics, and you are not late at all. This is probably going to happen next summer at the earliest.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So I digress.
I'll send you the link actually to sign up.
Yeah. What was the original question before I diverted us?
How does it feel to be a pioneer of this people analytics world we live in?
It feels good. It does feel good. I have to say that it. What are the elements of that feeling good? I think it allows me to be in my coach mode and help people. It allows me to be in my teacher mode, and I love
Yeah.
doing those things. And then it's you so I think of it more as still a pioneer and still many more things to figure out and understand, as opposed
Yeah.
to looking backwards and saying, "Hey, it's all been done." So the future is quite bright, I think, for people analytics. So much still to happen. So poised
Yeah.
for those
Of
discoveries.
course.
Well,
Like,
do you mind if I look backwards for a second, just for the audience's sake? So, I wanted to introduce you real quick, Amit. You're the founder and CEO of the firm People Analytics Success. You've built and scaled people analytics teams at Apple, McKesson, and Wayfair. You also began your professional career as a labor economist at the World Bank and worked for a few firms like Goldman Sachs, IBM, Lucent Technologies, and Willis Towers Watson. You're currently leading the data and analytics insights teams at Takeda Pharmaceuticals on the global corporate affairs and sustainability function. And just two kind of interesting asides. One is you're an advisor to an HR technology venture capital firm, Sempervirens, and you're also teaching people analytics virtually at the Stanford Continuing Studies program. So, and I'm not even mentioning everything that you've got a heck of a bio here. And one funny aside, Amit, I actually randomly had lunch with somebody I was mentoring that was from Australia that happened to be in Dallas today, and they took your Stanford course. And I was like, I'm talking to Amit this afternoon. It's amazing. It's such a small world. So I just wanted to kind of point that out there. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about, what it was like or what it is like teaching people analytics at Stanford.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a privilege. I've been doing it since about 2019, and initially it was an in-person course, sort of like a seminar, 2 days over a weekend. But before that, I'd been teaching at UC Berkeley. So within their HR certification program, there was a course on people analytics, and so I taught that first. But it was very hard to change the curriculum in a public university, and so Stanford offered more freedom and flexibility. I could essentially create my own course. So I switched over to Stanford, and it's in the continuing studies program. And so you get a lot of variety in terms of the students. The timings are set for California time, so it's 5 to I think 6:45 in the evenings. But increasingly, it's grown very international, and so obviously there are some countries because of the time zone you can't make it. But we've had people from as far as Australia, India, a lot of folks from Central South America as well. It turns out. So you get people who are interested in people analytics from different uh, standpoints. So you have people analytics professionals, practitioners, leaders, people who are just starting, people who are thinking of starting. You have CEOs of people analytics technology companies. You have folks from venture capital, just a wide variety. And the beauty of it is, I do some of the teaching, but everyone also learns from each other because they all bring such varied and rich experiences. And I've had to keep increasing the time. So it used to be, I think, 90 minutes, then I've increased it successively to about 1 hour and 45 minutes.
You're in
Yeah.
demand. You're in
Well,
demand.
we can never complete the syllabus in time because there's always discussion. And anyway, so I think we have always a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
I learn a lot throughout the course. It's about 30 people. We keep a cap, and it fills up each time. I'm
In
teaching
like
it.
20 minutes, right? I keep seeing that people try to sign up and it gets filled up really quickly.
I don't know if it's that fast, but you have to watch for the announcement. So I used to teach in the summer and winter quarters, and now I'm switching it up. So I'm teaching in the spring and fall quarters. So I think the next quarter starts in late March, early April, and goes for 8 sessions, 8 Tuesdays.
Have you been following this the developments of this Chat GPT,
Yeah,
Amit?
incredible.
It is
And
absolutely.
I posted a comment there saying I don't need to do office hours for my course anymore because people can just ask this chat, you know,
Well, I mean,
whatever
like
they want.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like what impact is this going to have on you teaching, especially in like a remote environment when the kids can just plug in all the text into Chat GPT, summarize it. Do they read it? Maybe, maybe not. What implications are there for the education?
Huge implications, right? So, in a sense, it democratizes a lot of information to people. It expands the realm of what's available. Whether it's your library or the places in the internet you're used to seeing or think of seeing. So it just pulls everything that you won't even be aware of and puts it in front of you. Um,
And
but on the negative
even the
side,
teaching, yeah.
Yeah. So can it replace teachers? To some extent for some basic stuff, but I think like with all AI, you need some sort of human layer on top to have the best usage of it. But what I've seen so far, Richard Rosenoff's post, the questions he asked, which were pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard in another podcast that there was another usage where they asked it to write an academic paper, um, and it also created the sources, some of which were fake, just made up sources, with people's names, but made up the sources, which is that's really something. Yeah, and so Turing test easily passed on this one, easily.
It sounds like the one thing it can't recreate though is those side conversations or the discussions that your students are finding so valuable, right?
Yeah, and also the experiences that people bring. So if unless someone's published an experience, written a blog post about it, and it comes up in the search for company and people analytic use case or case study, you'd miss that. And then I think on it's all it's math, science, psychology, economics, but
Mm-hmm.
to make the magic, you need I think the human element to explain it, to pull everything together, contextualize it.
Well, and I think it relates somewhat to this concept, like the barrier of entry to getting insights is dropping dramatically, right? It was already dropping before the invention of things like Chat GPT, but it's dropping even further. And one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about today, Amit, was this article you had from back in the day called Three Laws of Workforce Analytics. And I even heard you speak in New York about this concept lately about the second law, which I think is becoming more and more salient as the barrier to entry for insights is lowering, which is the consumption of workforce analytics requires effort, right? And so if the barrier to creating insights is functionally zero, then all that's left to do something with it is effort,
Yeah.
right? I don't know. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, sure. So you've articulated the second law perfectly. When I published it in 2015, I put law in quotation mark because I wasn't that confident at that time. But the reason I wrote the blog post was it was 2015. It was the anniversary of Moore's law. It's the April 14th or something, and I was about to join Apple on Monday. So I figured, let me write something and put it out there that helps other people, that kind of, condenses some of the learnings I've had. And because I knew that once I joined Apple, I wouldn't be able to publish because of, you know, their practice of being very
Because
secret.
it's Apple. We all know.
So I wrote it out. So three laws. And the second law is perhaps the most mundane sounding, and if you just read it, it probably doesn't make too much sense. But at the end of the day, in my experience, and I think you've heard me say before, you may have come across some of my writings, that people analytics is largely at this stage still even about leading change, right? Changing the way people think, behave, act in HR and outside. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to be constantly disappointed and frustrated. So, so the consumption piece comes in. So we're all very excited in people analytics to produce analyses, to build dashboards. But what I find is that people are very happy when a dashboard, for example, is built. There's always rejoicing in the land because it's so awesome.
Yes.
Dashboards can be very thrilling, but then invariably the usage drops off, and many reasons. Partly, I think, because of this need to do the work, because no dashboard can give you exactly what you want. So you have to dig around and get things from different places and come up with your argument and build the case and do the analysis. So I noticed people were loath to do that, and so there was that, and then also I think people began to kind of assume that once there was an analytics team, that was also the end of the story, that they would come up with all the answers. But it's a
How little
transformation
did
of
they
HR.
know?
Yeah, it's a transformation of HR. Everyone in HR needs to be able to do it, and I think people analytics is only going to be ultimately successful if it's in the bloodstream. If people don't have to go to this central organization to get their answers or to study their situation. So
How do you make it in the bloodstream? Just out of curiosity, from your experience.
so you have to enable it, right? So the approach that I've taken is you have to make people first comfortable with it. Then you have to help people become confident in their capabilities, and then you have to make them capable so they're actually able to do
Oh,
this.
3 C's. I like it.
I didn't even think of that. Maybe just my consulting background automatically came up with the 3 C's.
I sense a new paper coming up, a new blog post
Yeah.
somewhere in the future. So it's not only about making people comfortable with like someone else deriving insight, but also make it easy for people to take these insights and implement them, right? Or is it just the implementation phase that people struggle with?
Well, I think the easier you make it, the more consumable you make it, the more uptake you'll get, and the more people will use your insights and act upon them. But I think sometimes we probably over rotate on the simplification for a number of reasons.
Hmm.
One, there's this whole thing about make it into a story. Two, there's this notion that we shouldn't burden people with HR terminology, right? And so we try and mush it into such bite size, easy, like a mama bird, chewing food and kind of
Yeah.
bird. And I think we do some disservice to the function and to ultimately our clients. I think we have to again make people comfortable with this, whether it's HR or our clients who are consuming people analytics outside HR even.
It is funny. You'll perform this entire analysis and like, it just takes you like perhaps weeks, months, and you have all these beautiful insights and it gets distilled down to say one bullet point that gets into a PowerPoint. And that's the whole takeaway. And like you hear it repeated in the organization. You're like, yeah, but it's more nuanced than just like 85% increase in this variable based on this. It's kind of disheartening in a lot of ways, but it does get distilled down because otherwise you won't get the uptake.
Yeah. Well, for scientists like you guys, it is disheartening, right? Because there are so many qualifications, and you feel nervous, or you feel you haven't done your job by providing a parameter estimate, for example, without providing more background on how you estimated it and what the drawbacks were. But I think, on the other hand, it gets traction. These numbers get discussed, they bring attention, and ultimately, it drives debate and
Yeah.
maybe further research. So, and then
I
the whole a lot of HR work is all revolves around surveys. Not once have I, or very infrequently, has anyone ever asked about sample selection bias or how did this, how did you choose the people to do the survey, or we just take it for granted, and these survey numbers are quoted as if they're, infallible.
But you also bring up a good point about like HR professionals in particular when it comes to like sharing the numbers. I think because for whatever reason, HR has a need to show their work because they are not part of the business, right? And if any of those numbers are wrong or off for some reason, then you kind of get pinned to the floor because like, oh, well, we can't trust any of your work because, this number is off.
Well, let me argue against that. So I think we put too how to burden ourselves in terms of specificity on the numbers, right?
Exactly.
So I think
Yeah.
there's classical physics and there's quantum physics. There's math and there's fuzzy math. Not to say people analytics is like quantum physics or that it's fuzzy in any way, but you have to be careful about being so precise to the very head count
Yes.
or any other parameters. So I think you have to set that expectation to begin with. And yeah, it is easy to attack the data, uh, but we can attack finance data, we can attack operations data. I don't know why HR folks are immune, right? You should be able to answer those questions. So this is where familiarity with the data, the fact that you've actually worked with it, you understand it, helps. But I also think that it's a bit of a chip on our shoulder that we think of the business and we think of HR.
Yeah.
What I
Right.
try and encourage my students and folks in my team to think of is that we're in the business of talent, right? And the business of talent, like any other business, thrives on information. You can't develop strategy without information and insight. And and like any business, it's got its own jargon, right? And so we shouldn't be shy to talk about
No.
certain things. In fact, if if people truly are the most important asset, if human capital is so important, then everyone needs to speak the language.
Totally agree. Well, I kind of want to build on this for a second. And, I do agree that we as a field and sometimes the HR function itself has a chip on its shoulder, but also to kind of take the other side of the argument, are we being critical enough of ourselves in terms of like, I saw that you had messaged something about the Unanalytics Award that has come up in the past of something that you've done and I'm wondering, we are pretty friendly and we are pretty supportive of each other in terms of, the content that gets put out about people analytics. I think we get a lot of coach cheerleading and stuff. Should we be more critical of ourselves? And maybe explain what the Unanalytics Award was.
Sure. So I think our people analytics community is just wonderful, right? As you said, so supportive, so inclusive. Everyone helps each other, and I mean, even things like sharing about jobs where the same people might be competing for the same job, but that's fine, you know. And if you go to conferences and you or listen to stuff, podcasts, whatever, uh, it's all very positive. And when people present results, everyone listens and takes it, appreciates it. But I don't think there is enough critique yet, right? So sometimes in LinkedIn posts you may have some conversation, and some people will pull up some points. But again, if you go back to your academic days when people visiting professors or there were seminars and people presented stuff, I don't know how it is with psychologists, but economists, boy, they rip each other's work to shreds, try to find any fault. Um, it's almost like a blood sport. But you have to but your work had to be
That still
strong enough.
occurs. It still occurs.
But your work had to be strong enough, so it builds, a degree of quality. So I think we could probably, have forums where there's a bit more dialogue in the sense of constructive feedback, a bit more probing on what exactly was your methodology, what was the situation. So just more probing, situational interview almost, right, of the work. And I think it'll be healthy. I think there are perhaps venues that are better placed for it, like workshop
Yeah.
versus presentations. But presentations always have the opportunity for questions, and I think I think we do have to be somewhat diplomatic, and you can always have.
Well, I want to make a criticism here for a second.
Yeah,
I
of
keep
Scott,
seeing
right?
these
Not me.
well, and it's not of you. It's just I see these articles all the time, and it's like we did a study that showed that top companies do following XYZ practice. And therefore, if you do following XYZ practice, you'll make $50 billion more a year. And I'm like, this is such garbage science. And everybody cheerleads it. I'm like, come on. This is at best a correlational study, if that. So I don't know if you've seen that or experienced that, but that is a frustration of mine.
Yeah, no, that happens all the time. I mean, all these things can be used, misused, abused. And that's why it's important for folks in HR to be comfortable with this notion of analysis and what makes sense. And the fact that, again, as scientists, we know that everything we come up with could be wrong. We have to be open to the fact that we're fallible. And in many cases, in situations, it's hard to do that. You have to go in guns blazing. You can't, appear to admit that you may have left out a variable, or you may have not considered something.
So I mean, like, with that said, like, you're on the conference board, you're in a unique position to see, what's coming around the bend. Like, what's the future of people analytics hold?
The future of people analytics.
Yeah.
I guess in my incarnation as people analytics veteran, this should be a natural question. And it's a good question, something we should always be asking ourselves. I think it's a bright future. I think obviously more and more companies have people analytics teams. There are more and more upcoming and veteran people analytics leaders to lead these teams. I think, again, coming back to trying to infuse people analytics into the bloodstream of HR, I think teams should grow to meet the demand, right? And that's the first law of workforce analytics, that the demand for workforce analytics grows exponentially. But over time, you've got to build the assets. You've got to roll out, certain things that equip HR people to fend for themselves, to fish for themselves, if you will. And so at some point, the central team should get smaller, and capabilities emerge in the regions and the business units, or little teams. Because I think in the bloodstream means you're right there near the organs, near the tissue. And so you're right there in the business, and you're best positioned to understand what is the need, and what can we do to achieve our business objectives that could be influenced by some talent dynamic or situation.
Well, my riff on this has been people analytics moves from being an add-on to the way that business is done, which is essentially, I think, what you're saying, like in the bloodstream, right? And once it's in the bloodstream, you don't have all that waste and inefficiency of it being an add-on. And so I agree that teams could get smaller because, again, you're kind of crowdsourcing the people analytics knowledge in the organization. And so therefore, you don't need it just to reside in a few individuals.
Yeah. The other aspect of the future of people analytics, I've always maintained that in time, the next heads of HR will largely come from the ranks of people analytics leaders, right? Because
that makes sense.
People analytics leaders see everything. They kind of understand different parts of the HR world and machinery. And previously, they used
Can I poke on this a little bit, Amit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because I actually used to believe this, and then I got closer to the chief people officer position. I was like, oh no, this is not made for an analytics person. Because it seems like they have to deal with so many, I don't know, organizational type, I don't know, like I don't have a nice word for it.
Relational issues as opposed to task issues or technical issues. I totally.
I was going to say bullshit, but you said it better than I did. Like they have to deal with so much stuff that it just doesn't seem like analytics leaders are really cut from that cloth.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because I was at a conference recently, and it was a panel. It was a conference of a HR analytics company, and there was a panel of people analytics practitioners, and it was being moderated by the head of HR for that company. And he asked the question because I know that, and he has the same thinking as me about this projection. So he asked the group, it was about 100 or more people, mostly people analytics practitioners and leaders. And he said, who's a people analytics leader, practitioner? And then who of you want to become the head of HR? And he was shocked. I was shocked. It's two people.
Out of how many?
But I think
The-
Paul, you're spot on. I think it's this discomfort with some of the non-technical things that
And
the CFO
those
wants
people
to
that
do.
want to be the head of HR are probably the people you don't want to be the head of HR.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like there's
Heavy
something
is the
going
head
on
that
with
wears
you.
the crown. Yeah. Well, hey, Amit, do you want to do some rapid fire questions?
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
Let's do some rapid fire. So I have 5 questions, and we're coming up on the holiday season here. So some questions for you. Okay, first one. Would you rather participate in a Secret Santa or have a known present giver?
Secret Santa. There's
Secret
always
Santa.
a bit of mystery. Always is exciting.
If you're wrapping gifts, are you like very exact? Are you like just throw it in a fucking
Yes.
bag? Throw it in
No,
a bag.
very exact. I like to do precise folds. Tape shouldn't show.
Okay, would you rather participate with a Christmas movie in with like the family or go to a Christmas party?
I think party.
Party.
Yeah.
What about you, Cole? I don't know this one.
Yeah, I mean, I would do party every stinking time. That sounds way more fun.
Okay. Are you happy with any gift or are you looking for the gift receipt?
I'm happy with any gift. It's always a thought that counts, and there is a secondary market for gifts. So you can always use it.
Oh, re-gifting? I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I like that. Yeah. It's giving it forward, pay it forward. I love it.
Exactly.
Okay, final one. Holidays, are they stressful or are they relaxing?
Stressful.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm capable of being relaxed, to be honest, but
You
that's
guys
like
have
another
any
story.
Wait. Let me go to Cole on that. Cole, you seem to be the most relaxed, chill, people analytics dude. So I'm surprised by that comment that you feel stressed.
Well, it's not, no, I wouldn't say it's necessarily stress. Like I used to have an old boss who was like, Cole, you need to go take a vacation, go to the beach. And I'm like, I don't want to go to the beach. I'm gonna be so bored.
that'd be boring, yeah.
Like I don't know. It's kind of like idle hands or the devil's plaything. I just need something to be doing all the time. I get really bored and anxious quickly.
Yeah, I hear that. When we go to vacations, if it's a resort vacation, I got to get out after 2 days.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
need to do something.
Not my wavelength.
Well, you wanna pop into the nerdery?
Let's do some nerdery.
Do
Let's
some
do it.
nerdery? Am I mute?
Yeah.
I am not on
Well, what
mute.
you got for us today, Scott?
Well, I mean, this is a kind of a tumultuous time. So this is an oldie but a goodie, but people are being laid off right now, and there's a lot of fear in organizations. So it's a great summary article. Is fear good in organizations? But as you can imagine, the influences of fear are rather pervasive and generally have an effect of silencing employees' opinions. So like they don't want to speak up to the boss, they don't speak up to their coworkers, this sort of thing. Organizations can counteract this a bit by creating safe spaces to vent, this sort of things. But like what I'm really interested in is like how does this impact innovation in the future if people refuse to speak up? You have this like emperor's new clothes sort of phenomenon where they're going to go along to get along.
Yeah, so I'll be a little measured here because I'm with psychologists, and fear is probably something that you guys have studied.
Yeah.
I haven't. I'm an economist. There's no market for fear. So, so I'm at a
I
disadvantage.
think there's a market for scary movies.
Yeah, true. a good proxy. So yeah, so I think the academic finding is that when there's fear, then people don't speak up, and possibly bad things could happen, and also there's a clamp on innovation. I think it's absolutely true. I think fear is one of the worst things you could have in an organization.
Yes.
Um, it it has different sources, obviously, right? Fear of the boss for whatever reason. They might hit you or retaliate or do something. And then there's just fears that every person probably has at some level of consciousness. Fear of failure,
Mm-hmm.
fear of being exposed as fraud, like imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
failure of being fear of being laughed at, because your ideas are not that as smart as you think.
I
Fear of losing your reputation. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so sorry. First, I messed up the title. It's "Silenced by Fear" is the name of this chapter review, and Amy Everson is one of the authors. But they do differentiate between two types of silence. One is this sort of like deliberative silence, where you're really contemplating a question and like you haven't formulated an answer yet. The other is like, I'm not going there because I don't want to rock the boat. And so like you're hitting on all these sort of aspects.
Yeah, it's fear of consequences,
Yeah.
negative consequences
Yeah.
that constrain you from speaking your mind or doing things. But there are some. If you look at fear from another angle, uh, there's fear of becoming obsolete, which should trigger
Yeah.
in you the
Yeah.
desire to upskill. Right? There is a fear of maybe missing out on different opportunities, which should
Mm-hmm.
inculcate in you this openness to new situations. So
Those are
there
those are the motivating
motivators.
aspects of fear. Yeah.
Because I was thinking, what's the opposite of fear? Courage comes to mind, right?
Absolutely.
But then there's this whole thing of motivation, because fear is a negative motivator, right?
Yeah.
So there are other negative motivators. What are the positive motivators, which is closest to fear?
I will say, I've seen these TikTok videos, and like Cole sends me TikToks of him dancing all the time
Nope.
in his
Does not
kitchen.
happen.
But it's like these people. It's like, it's my day in the life at a tech company, and like I roll in about 10:30, and then I go straight to the cafe, and they give me like all his food, and then I go to the yoga studio, and we kick out at 2 o'clock. And it's like, well, I guess you're just showing off, but B, like you should have a little more fear. Like you should be a little bit more worried than you are here.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I think about it, like this kind of ties back to the earlier parts of our conversation, like the fear of being obsolete. And that person who's, in that TikTok video should probably worry about that a little bit more
Oh
because
yeah.
they're not, but like I think about that in relation to Chat GPT and what we were talking about there. But I also think about like the fear of kind of social consequences and being figured out for being a fraud. Like, I'll be honest, before I started publishing articles, I was super scared that people were going to be mean to me. Like, I know that sounds really silly. And maybe and this ties back to like, we have a really supportive community with people analytics, but I was really worried that the community wasn't going to be supportive. And so, that fear, it does exist. And so I guess, that relates to the kind of psychological safety vein that this article is talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, like, there's no dress rehearsals. This is it, right? So in reality, does
No
anyone really?
kidding.
Yeah, yeah. In reality,
Yeah.
does anyone really care? So just go do what you want to do.
Now, I've got a hypothesis, Amit, and I don't know if this is true, but I suspect it's true just because I've heard you speak, I've seen the content you put out. I just imagine you're a very savvy leader in organizations. And kind of back to the point of obsolescence here for a second. One of the things we wanted to talk to you about today is people analytics as a function and leaders of our field being more politically savvy in organizations to make sure that people analytics has a seat at the table, that it becomes a part of the bloodstream, that it isn't seen as just the add-on that we were talking about earlier. And so I'm wondering, do you have any advice for leaders in our field for being more politically savvy in their organizations to kind of play the game of organizational politics?
Yeah, my advice is embrace it, and excel in it. Um, for my dissertation, I interviewed and surveyed a whole bunch of uh, what I call founding people analytics leaders, the very first people
Oh
analytics.
yeah, you did do that.
company.
I remember that.
Yeah. So, and I asked them, what are their regrets if they'd finished that at least one stint. And one of the regrets was not realizing how political things are, and if they did realize it, not engaging more in the game, as you call it, right?
But what
So,
does that mean? Like, I don't consider myself political, but what does politics mean to you in an
so
organization?
it's about the ownership, the attainment and retention and expansion of power.
Mm.
And power is essentially decision-making rights, uh, budget rights, rights to resources. Um,
Domain over your own
so yeah, yeah.
organization.
So yeah, and so there's you have to right away understand, even during the interview stage, understand what are the power structures, what are the power lines, who's really in charge. It may actually not. It's like the formal organization and the informal organization that you get through
Mm-hmm.
the X-ray of ONA, right? And so, who's really wielding the power? Who can kind of say no, and everyone has to listen. It could be some HR leader, not the head of HR. It depends, the different organizational structures, centralized, decentralized, and there's an element of that. You have to understand who's got the power, and when you're starting people analytics, you don't have much power. You have the potential for power,
Mm.
and at the end of the day, you will actually have a lot of it, because knowledge is power, and you know potentially everything that's going on in the world of HR, right? Um, and so you have to prepare yourself for that, because if you're not ready for that, then it's not good.
Like back to your point about like network analysis, like you'll often find that like the person next to the person in power has most of the gatekeeping rights. So it's
Mhm.
like we've all like, you got to be nice to the secretary because otherwise she won't put you on the calendar with the head, and therefore that person is really the controlling structure. And we have these sort of like examples all over the place.
Yeah, that's a great example. Um, so it's dispersed, even though it may not seem that way in the org structure. So you have to figure that out. And often um, headcount is a sign of power, right? So you accrue
Yes.
more headcount, you accrue more power, and that's unfortunate, because it doesn't look at how you run your organization, it's just the size of it. And I think maybe because everyone's focused on getting more headcount, we land up in the situation as we are today, where you got to let a lot of people go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a negative consequence of it. But yeah, I think people have to understand it. And I began reading this book. It was recommended to me because I've written two blog posts, among many, but one is people analytics and particle physics.
Hmm.
And the other is people analytics and poetry. And the third one, in what I hope to think of as a triptych, is people analytics and power. And,
Yeah.
the powerlessness that new people analytics leaders find themselves with initially,
Yes.
but then the potential for immense power within HR. Because if you think about it, and this is a feature of the slow adoption of people analytics, right? So everyone is for it in theory, right? Who could be against it? It's awesome. But what begins to happen is that some of the stakeholders begin to realize that their power is under threat, because,
Yes.
for example, a senior HR leader might begin to realize, oh my God, now these people analytics guys are going to expose the fact that I've not been running a tight ship, or that once the comparative numbers across business units are revealed, that I end up in the bottom quartile, and my stock with the CHRO will sink. So you begin to wield that power, and if you don't realize that's what's going on, and if you don't know how to, you know, wield that power well for good, always for good, um, then it's unlikely you'll be successful in growing the people analytics business.
Yeah, I really want to like emphasize what you're saying, because I'm as guilty of this as the next person. Is I thought being a people analytics leader meant you could come in and be a neutral arbiter of data for an organization, and that's just too idealistic. Is that you are a stakeholder, you are a cog in the machine, and therefore you have to play, these roles in the organization to be effective as a leader. Or, if as the expression goes, if you're not at the table, you're likely on the menu. And I think we've seen in very recent weeks that a lot of people analytics teams were on the menu, and it was not a good outcome. And so it is really, really important that leaders understand this in terms of being an effective people analytics leader. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Amit.
Yeah, I mean, you have power in the sense, which analysis do you show? Which what do you include or not include in your analysis? How do you frame the outcome of the result, right? Which story do you tell? Do you tell a story or do you tell a tale?
Yeah.
So you have editorial rights, first dibs on editorial right on how the out data and how the analysis is explained. That's tremendous power, right? And,
Yep.
and you have to be careful not to let somebody else take that power, because they may not use it for good, right? I think we're in a situation where, by and large, you're right. People analytics folks go in with this notion of neutrality, of objectivity, but data and analytics, by their nature, you would assume it's all kind of objective, but there's so much subjectivity,
So many choices that are
so
made
many
throughout the
choices.
process.
Yeah, yeah. And then just one last thing on power, so it's all of these things, but playing the game also means being really wary of who's got your back and who's out to get you. And believe it or not, in every organization, for all kinds of reasons, you have many of the latter.
Man, that is just super insightful. I was talking to Cole some time ago about a situation, and he had something really insightful to say. I won't necessarily put words into Cole's mouth, but he essentially said that, like, the higher you go in the organization, the better people are at these political games, and they grow to like it. So you get this sort of select group, which is possibly why people analytics leaders don't necessarily thrive in this environment.
Yeah.
Well, I saw it through the psychological phenomena of attraction, selection, attrition. And it's the people that make it through to the highest levels of the organization. They're the ones who don't get selected out along the way. And so all that's left is people who want to play these games. And so if you're going to be in a savvy political people analytics leader, you've got to, be savvy in these ways to what organizations are staffed as.
Yeah, but it's all fun and games compared to politics and academic departments. I think
No kidding. Gosh.
That's the real blood sport, huh?
Yeah.
Life on the farm at Stanford. Get a little brutal, huh?
No, not Stanford. I'm not in. I'm in the School for Continuing Studies, so it's a bit of a remove
Not
from me.
there. Not there.
Well, maybe we pivot for our last nerdery topic. I just wanted to talk about this article that did some research. It's called "The Robot Revolution: Managerial and Employment Consequences for Firms." And essentially, what they were talking about is as firms adopt more automation and more robots in the organization, what they don't see usually is a decrease in their frontline workforce. What they do see is a reduction in the number of managers in an organization, an increase in the span of control. of those managers. And so it's kind of an interesting second order effect. I think most people assumed with automation that you would eliminate, manual roles or frontline level roles, but really it's been a reduction in managerial, workforces. What are your reactions to this finding?
Yeah, so it is counterintuitive based on what we've experienced so far, but we haven't really experienced much. And this is one study in one situation. So, but it does lead us to think about the implications, right? Because it makes sense. It's certainly possible, and it's got a lot of implications for organizations, for workforce planning as well. And I think, Paul, you were the one who's not grounded in Star Trek. Is that right?
That is correct. You are
Okay.
you picked up on the right things to take away from these episodes.
Good, good, good. So, you know, increasingly the workforce is going to be populated, uh, in addition to being populated by carbon-based units, i.e., human beings, also silicon-based units, so programs and robots. And so ultimately, workforce planning is going to have to take that into account as work is allocated between the two. But until now, we've always thought about the work, not the supervision. And so this is actually quite an interesting thing to consider. Now, it depends what level of supervision and whether it's true supervision, because there's supervision and there's management and there's leadership, right? So I'm not sure what context the word was used, but to supervise is essentially from our industrial heritage of workers that would prefer, this is also an economist's point of view. Rationally, workers would prefer not to work. They'd prefer to shirk. In the language
Sounds like
of
that TikTok video.
yeah. So then you need someone to monitor them, right? To make sure, to observe, to make sure that they are working. That's why you need the supervisor. Um, so so it's certainly got its supervisors are in frontline roles for the most part, where you perhaps need this, perhaps not. If you think about a lot of frontline work, it's the part of the labor force that's the most measured, right? The workers in distribution centers,
Yeah, we've talked about
call
this before
centers.
for sure.
Yeah, so you have a lot of data there, and so maybe it is amenable to robotic supervision. But then you go a little bit higher in other kinds of work, perhaps not.
Yeah, for my 2020 COVID project, I transcribed all of the first seasons of all the series of Star Treks into a big network analysis and how they interact with one another. And the most central node, it's on my Twitter if y'all want to go check it out. But the most central node was computer. I wound up taking it out because it was just so dominant right in the middle. But I never really thought about in those terms that like this is going to be our robot overlord. But I mean, this also has implications for like Elon Musk at Twitter says all managers need to be able to code, and Steve Jobs has some insights as well of like that they tried to bring in managers and like it just didn't work out at Apple. What they really needed was great individual level contributors that rose to managers because they could also teach the people below them. That's perhaps what we're seeing as well with like the automation aspect that
Yeah.
you just don't need the managers.
Yeah. Scott, you mentioned computer as the center of the node, and just tying back to the consumption and ease of consuming insight. So my ultimate intention when I was building dashboards at an organization was recognizing that people didn't come back to them because they had to do work. What I wanted to do is try and put on top of it a Siri-like interface, so you could just ask the question, because underneath it all the data is structured, right, and tagged and everything. So you should be able to ask in natural language queries of the data. Now this chatbot, generative AI chatbot, should make that even more feasible.
Yeah, I think we're seeing like an increased automation across not only the business, but HR as well. So you got like these chat bots that eliminate the need for employees to go and search for uh, compensation information, or like how do you get your benefits? These sort of like common questions that they can better answered by just like self-service sort of things.
Yeah. If you think about it, we have our tricorders. Sorry,
Yeah.
we have our tricorders, and we can invoke the computer anytime we want to.
That's your communication badge right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. What we didn't talk about today. I meant to, but we haven't gotten there. What are you doing now?
What I'm doing now.
So I feel like you abandoned us in people analytics and you've moved more into like corporate affairs. What the heck's going on there, man?
I haven't abandoned the field at all. It was a question of timing and opportunity. So I had just wrapped up my doctorate, and it was in analytics and change management.
And congratulations again. Well done.
Thanks. You were very sweet when you joined my Stanford course. You addressed me as Dr. Mohindra, and that was
Yeah, I did do
very
that. I did
kind
that.
of you. I don't use doctor much at all, but it was nice to hear because I had just gotten it. What was this? Yeah, so I heard about this opportunity where a leader wanted to transform their organization into a more data-driven, more digital function. This was the corporate affairs function, which includes communications, global sustainability, uh, corporate social responsibility, and public affairs. And so I thought, well, I know analytics, I know change management, I don't know this field, this function. I wonder if I can make a difference here. And I can also learn about this new industry in pharmaceuticals. So I work for a company called Takeda Pharmaceuticals. It's a Japanese biopharma company based in Tokyo with a large presence in Cambridge. And the remarkable thing about Takeda is it's 241 years old. So
Oh my gosh.
doing things right. And coming
Did
out
the
of people
company start
analytics
on
gives
stone tablet?
coming out of people analytics gives you a bit of perspective as well, right? Because you're not immersed in it fully. I'm still attending conferences here and there, still reading the literature, listening to the best podcasts.
It's just a startup, right?
Yeah.
So it gives you that crossover and perspective, and I'm learning something new, and yeah, I'm having fun, and it allows me to mix things up. So Cole, you were at that conference in New York the other day, where I was speaking about building sustainable organizations, like a combination of sustainability and ESG, and all the organizational stuff that we get involved with as people analysts.
Yeah. Want to know what is ESG? Just for the people who aren't familiar with the acronym.
Environment, social governance. It's the non-financial aspect.
Yeah.
It's come about as a, I guess, as a part of stakeholder capitalism, and so a lot the E gets the most attention, environment, but people analytics plays a big role in the S, the social, which includes diversity, equity, inclusion, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really burgeoning area. And I see not just from, I think, people's personal interest in the space, but it seems like there's legislative and, governmental interest, and even kind of things like the World Economic Forum and things like that. They're very interested in this space, especially for publicly traded companies. So for the leaders in our field that aren't aware of the space, they should be, because it's definitely gaining traction and steam. But I know Scott had to pop off here because I guess some kind of fire came up. But Amit, just to kind of close this out, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. Any closing words for our audience?
No, thank you so much, Cole and Scott, for inviting me. A real pleasure always connecting. I actually wanted to invite Scott, because you've already been a guest speaker poll at my
Yeah.
course. They wanted to invite Scott to be a guest speaker in the spring quarter. So I'll reach out to him. And
Perfect.
yeah, if anyone's interested, keep your eyes open. I'll probably do a LinkedIn post before registration begins, so everyone has time to register. And then
Yeah.
I'm really delighted also that in January, I think the 24th, I'll be doing a webinar for Harvard Business School in their business analytics program, and it's related to people analytics. So I'm going to be in my incarnation as the people analytics veteran, and it's kind of an ask me anything format. So how to start, how to nurture, how to lead, in people analytics. So again, I'll
Do you have a
post
link? Do you have a link that you can share that we could put in the show notes?
not just yet, but I'll share it with you, and I'll do a LinkedIn post once everything is finalized.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to kind of boost your message if we can. But no, and Scott would be an excellent guest at your course. Tee him up with O&A, and I promise you he won't disappoint. I've seen him speak before. I've invited him to speak at organizations where I worked in the past, and he has been excellent. So he would be a great guest. But well, thank you again, Amit, for joining, or Dr. Mohindra, I should have said earlier. But thank you for joining us today. And you've been listening to Directionally Correct People Analytics Podcast with Cole and Scott. Thanks for joining us today.